My son asked me to co-sign his first home. I thought I was helping him and his wife build their future. 6 months later, my daughter-in-law looked at me and said, "What house?"
The day my son asked me to co-sign for his first house, I thought it was one of the proudest moments of my life. He was 31, newly married, working hard, and talking about building a future with his wife. I was a widower by then. After losing my wife, my son, Ryan, was the closest family I had left. So when he sat across from me at my kitchen table and said, "Dad, I just need your name beside mine," I didn't see danger. I saw trust. I saw my son finally becoming the man his mother and I had raised him to be. 6 months later, I was standing in my daughter-in-law's kitchen when she said something that made my stomach tighten. "I still haven't seen the house." I thought she was joking. She wasn't. The home I had helped my son buy, the home I believed Ryan and his wife were preparing to move into, was already occupied. And the woman living there wasn't a stranger. I knew her name. I knew her face. And nearly 25 years earlier, she had been part of the most painful chapter of my life. That was when I understood something far worse than financial betrayal. My son hadn't simply used my credit. He had used my name to reopen a door I had spent half my life trying to close. My name is Michael Grant, and I was 62 when this happened. For most of my adult life, I had been careful with money. Not wealthy. Careful. There's a difference. I worked as an operations manager for a regional manufacturing company for 34 years. I paid bills on time, avoided unnecessary debt, maintained excellent credit, and slowly built enough savings to feel secure. My wife, Elaine, used to joke that I could turn grocery receipts into financial reports. She was the opposite. She believed money mattered only because of what it allowed you to do for the people you loved. Maybe that was why we worked so well together. I planned. She softened me. When Elaine passed away 3 years before this story began, the house became painfully quiet. Ryan was our only child. He called regularly, visited most weekends, and checked on me more often than I probably needed. His wife, Lauren, had married him 2 years earlier. I liked her immediately. She was practical, calm, thoughtful, and independent. She worked in healthcare administration and seemed like someone who wanted a stable life rather than an impressive one. So when Ryan called me one Saturday morning and asked if he could stop by alone, I assumed he wanted advice about work. Instead, he arrived carrying a folder. We sat at my kitchen table. He opened it carefully. Inside were mortgage documents. "Dad," he said, "Lauren and I found a house." I smiled. "That's big news." He nodded. "We weren't going to tell anyone until we knew we could make it happen." I asked where it was. He told me it was about 40 minutes away in a quiet neighborhood called Brookfield Heights. 3 bedrooms. 2 bathrooms. Small backyard. Nothing extravagant. Exactly the kind of starter home I expected them to buy. Then Ryan's excitement faded. "There's one problem." His income was solid, he explained, but some old student debt and a few financial mistakes from his 20s had weakened his borrowing position. Lauren had better credit, but according to Ryan, she didn't want the mortgage tied heavily to her because she was considering going back to school. "So what do you need?" I asked. Ryan looked directly at me. "Just a cosigner." I didn't answer immediately. He leaned forward. "Dad, I'd never ask if I wasn't certain I could make the payments." I studied him. He looked nervous. But not dishonest. At least, that's what I believed then. "What does Lauren think?" "She's okay with it." That answer would come back to me later. At the time, it sounded completely reasonable. I asked to see the numbers. Ryan smiled. That was the moment he knew I was considering it. We spent the next hour reviewing everything. Mortgage. Insurance. Taxes. Estimated monthly payment. Ryan had prepared well. Nothing seemed reckless. Eventually I closed the folder. You understand that if something goes wrong, I'm responsible too. I know. And you understand what that could do to me financially. I know, Dad. Then his voice softened. I wouldn't put you at risk. Those were the words that convinced me. I wouldn't put you at risk. I signed 2 weeks later. For the first several months, everything seemed normal. Ryan sent me a picture of the front of the house after closing. Gray siding. White trim. A small maple tree near the driveway. I remember staring at that picture longer than necessary. Not because the house was beautiful. Because I felt proud. When Ryan was 9, Elaine and I had nearly lost our own house during a difficult financial year. I remembered how frightened we had been. So helping my son begin his adult life with more stability felt meaningful. Almost like correcting something from my own past. Ryan told me he and Lauren wanted to renovate before moving in. New flooring. Paint. Kitchen updates. Nothing major. I offered to help. Ryan immediately refused. Dad, you've already done enough. I laughed. Painting a wall isn't exactly suffering. But he kept insisting. Let me handle this. I respected that. Maybe I even admired it. I thought he wanted to prove the house was truly his responsibility. Every month, I checked the mortgage account. Payments were made on time. No missed deadlines. No problems. So I stopped worrying. Then I started noticing something strange. Whenever I asked Lauren about the house, her answers were vague. At first, I assumed she was simply letting Ryan handle the project. One afternoon at a family cookout, I asked what color she had chosen for the kitchen. Lauren gave me a confused smile. The kitchen? In the new place. She glanced toward Ryan. He was talking with someone across the yard. Oh. Ryan's choosing most of that. I laughed. That seems dangerous. She smiled politely. But something about her expression stayed with me. She didn't look excited. She looked uncomfortable. I should have asked more questions. I didn't. Because trust has an unusual effect on the mind. Once you decide someone is trustworthy, your brain starts explaining away the things that should concern you. 6 months after closing, Lauren called and invited me to dinner. Ryan was supposed to attend, but a few hours before dinner, he texted saying work had run late. I almost canceled. Lauren said I should still come. So I did. We were eating when I asked the question casually. When are you two finally moving into the house? Lauren stopped chewing. She stared at me. What house? I laughed because I thought she was teasing me. Your house. Her face changed. Not dramatically. Just enough. What are you talking about? The Brookfield house. Her fork lowered slowly. Michael. I felt something cold move through my chest. The house Ryan bought. Lauren shook her head. We didn't buy a house. For several seconds, neither of us spoke. I actually wondered whether Ryan had been planning some kind of surprise. Then Lauren said, we've been saving, but we haven't even started seriously looking. I stared at her. I co-signed a mortgage 6 months ago. All the color disappeared from her face. What? For you and Ryan. Lauren pushed her plate away. I have never signed anything. Suddenly every vague conversation made sense. Every confused expression. Every excuse. I pulled out my phone. I found the picture Ryan had sent me. I showed it to her. Lauren looked at the image as if she were seeing evidence from someone else's life. I have never been there. That sentence was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I understood about my son. We called Ryan immediately. He didn't answer. Lauren called again. Nothing. 20 minutes later, he texted her. Busy. Call you later. Lauren showed me. Her hands were trembling. What exactly did he tell you? She asked. I explained everything. That they had found a house. That she didn't want to be heavily attached to the mortgage. That they planned to renovate before moving. Lauren looked stunned. I never said any of that. I already knew. But hearing her say it made the betrayal real. There was still one possibility I desperately wanted to believe. Maybe Ryan had purchased the house as an investment. Maybe he had lied because he thought I wouldn't help otherwise. That would still be wrong. But it would be understandable. I was searching for the least painful explanation. Lauren wasn't. She looked at me and said, "We need to go there." It was after 8 at night. I suggested waiting until morning. Lauren shook her head. If Ryan lied to both of us about a house, I'm not sleeping tonight. Neither was I. So we drove to Brookfield Heights. The drive took 42 minutes. I remember because I watched the navigation screen constantly. Lauren barely spoke. When we turned onto the street, I recognized the maple tree immediately. There it was. The house from Ryan's picture. But it didn't look like an unfinished renovation. Warm light glowed through the windows. Curtains hung in the living room. 2 flower pots sat near the front steps. A car was parked in the driveway. Someone lived there. Lauren whispered, "Whose car is that?" I didn't know. Then the front door opened. A woman stepped outside carrying a small bag. She looked to be in her mid-50s. I couldn't see her clearly at first. Then she turned beneath the porch light. My entire body went still. Lauren noticed. What? I couldn't answer. The woman looked toward our car. Even from that distance, I recognized her. Rebecca Hale. A woman I had not seen in almost 25 years. A woman whose name Elaine and I had once promised never to speak again. Lauren looked at me. You know her? I kept staring at Rebecca. Yes. How? My voice came out quieter than I expected. She used to be married to my brother. My younger brother's name was David. Growing up, David and I were close. But adulthood changed us. He struggled with money. Changed jobs constantly. Borrowed from family. Made promises he couldn't keep. Rebecca married him when they were both 26. For a few years, they seemed happy. Then everything began falling apart. David started hiding debts. Rebecca started accusing him of financial dishonesty. Their marriage became a battlefield. Elaine and I tried not to get involved. Then David came to me one evening asking for money. A lot of money. He claimed he and Rebecca were about to lose their apartment. I helped him. A month later, Rebecca showed up at our house furious. She claimed David had told her the money came from selling equipment they owned together. She believed I was helping him hide assets from her. I wasn't. But the situation exploded. There were arguments. Accusations. Family members choosing sides. Eventually, David and Rebecca divorced. David moved across the country. Rebecca disappeared from our lives. Years later, David and I slowly repaired our relationship. But he never completely recovered from that period. He passed away 11 years before Ryan bought the house. Ryan had been 20 at the time. He remembered his uncle. But I never realized how much he remembered about Rebecca. Or whether he had somehow remained connected to her. Lauren whispered, "Why would Ryan buy a house for his uncle's ex-wife?" I didn't know. But there was one thing I knew immediately. This wasn't random. I stood so quickly the chair scraped against the floor. I owed you. Rebecca looked ashamed. He said you knew what David had done. I didn't. I know. But Ryan told you I did? She nodded slowly. He said you had spent years carrying guilt. I almost laughed. Not because anything was funny. Because sometimes betrayal becomes so absurd that your mind doesn't know how else to respond. My son had taken a painful story from my past and rewritten me as the guilty person. Why? To justify what he was doing. Lauren asked Rebecca how the house had been purchased. Rebecca explained that Ryan had originally tried to qualify a loan. He couldn't. Then he told her his father had agreed to help make things right. That was me. I hadn't helped Ryan buy a first home with his wife. I had unknowingly financed a private act of restitution for something I had never done. But that still didn't explain everything. Because Ryan was making every payment. And those payments were too large to disappear unnoticed from a married couple's finances. Lauren understood that too. She looked at Rebecca. How is Ryan paying for this? Rebecca looked confused. I assumed from his salary. Lauren shook her head. Our accounts wouldn't support that. That was when I realized the house was only one part of the secret. Ryan finally called Lauren while we were still inside Rebecca's house. Lauren answered and immediately put the phone on speaker. Where are you? Ryan asked. Lauren looked at me. Then at Rebecca. Your house. Silence. Not confusion. Not surprise. Silence. Ryan knew exactly what she meant. Lauren continued. The house your father co-signed. Another pause. Lauren, listen. No. You listen. I am sitting beside your father and Rebecca. Ryan exhaled slowly. I can explain. I spoke for the first time. Then start. Ryan didn't. Instead, he asked us to meet him the next morning. I refused. You have 1 minute to tell me why you used my financial reputation to buy a house for Rebecca. Dad, it's complicated. That answer is already 25 years old. Try another one. He said nothing. Then Lauren asked the question that changed the situation again. Where is the money coming from? Ryan whispered, what money? The mortgage payments. Ryan became quiet. Lauren's expression hardened. Ryan, I can see our finances. That payment is not coming from the accounts I know about. He ended the call. Just hung up. Lauren stared at the phone. That was when she began crying. Not loudly. She simply covered her mouth. Because she suddenly understood what I had already started to suspect. Ryan had another financial life. The next morning, Lauren called me. She hadn't slept. Neither had I. Ryan still hadn't returned home. Lauren had spent hours reviewing old statements. She found transfers. Small at first. Then larger. Money moving from their joint account into another bank. Ryan had always described those transfers as retirement contributions and automatic investment deposits. Some probably were. Others weren't. Lauren found an account number she didn't recognize. She also found payments to a property management company. Utilities. Insurance. Repair bills. Ryan hadn't just bought Rebecca a house. He had been maintaining it. And he had been carefully disguising the cost. Lauren estimated he had diverted nearly $40,000 over 18 months. Some came from his salary. Some came from joint savings. Money they had supposedly been saving for their own future home. That detail broke something in Lauren. She looked at me and said, I thought we were sacrificing together. I knew exactly what she meant. There are betrayals involving money. And then there are betrayals involving meaning. Lauren thought every postponed vacation, every dinner cooked at home, every expense they avoided was part of a shared plan. Ryan had allowed her to believe they were building something together while secretly using those sacrifices for another purpose. Ryan arrived at my house that afternoon. Not Lauren's apartment. Mine. That told me he was afraid to face her. I opened the door but didn't invite him in immediately. He looked exhausted. "Can we talk?" I stepped aside. We sat in the same kitchen where I had signed those documents months earlier. The folder was gone. But I could still picture it on the table. Ryan started with the sentence people often use when they know the truth sounds terrible. "I never meant for this to happen." I stared at him. "You contacted Rebecca?" "Yes." "You bought her a house?" "Yes." "You told her I owed her something?" Ryan looked down. "At first, I believed you did." "Based on what?" "What Uncle David told me years ago." I felt a sharp anger. David had apparently told Ryan before his death that our family had failed Rebecca. That we had protected him while she lost everything. Ryan carried that story for years. Then he found the old documents. Documents proving David had lied. I leaned forward. "So once you learned I was innocent, why didn't you stop?" Ryan looked at me. "Because by then I knew her." That answer stunned me. He explained that Rebecca had become more than a name from the past. She had told him about losing her savings. Starting over. Working multiple jobs. Living with the consequences of David's decisions. Ryan felt that even if I hadn't caused her suffering, our family had still benefited from walking away while she carried the damage. "So you decided to fix it?" I asked. "Yes." "With Lauren's money?" Ryan flinched. "With my credit?" He said nothing. "With my name?" Still nothing. I leaned back. "You didn't repair the past, Ryan. You created a new betrayal." There was one question I couldn't get past. Why me? If Ryan wanted to help Rebecca, he could have given her money. Paid rent. Helped with a down payment. Why build the entire arrangement around my financial reputation? Ryan finally answered. "Because I couldn't qualify." That explains how. Not why. He rubbed both hands over his face. Then he said something I still remember word for word. "I thought if you ever found out, you'd understand." I stared at him. "You lied because you thought I'd understand later?" "I thought once you saw what she went through." "Stop." My voice was calm. That scared him more than shouting would have. "You decided what I owed." Ryan looked away. "You decided what Lauren could sacrifice." Silence. "You decided Rebecca deserved a house." Another silence. "And then you decided everyone else's consent was optional." Ryan swallowed. "I was trying to do something good." That was the sentence that finally made me angry. People sometimes hide behind good intentions because admitting the truth would require them to face their ego. Ryan didn't simply want to help Rebecca. He wanted to be the man who corrected his family's history. He wanted to become the hero of a story he hadn't lived. And when reality got in the way, he changed reality. Lauren arrived 30 minutes later. Ryan stood when she entered. She didn't hug him. Didn't yell. She simply placed several printed bank statements on the table. "How much?" Ryan looked at them. "Lauren. How much of our money?" He answered quietly. 27,000. Lauren stared at him. "We had 42,000 saved." "I know. You took more than half." "I was replacing it." "With what?" Ryan couldn't answer. Lauren's voice began trembling. "We talked about having children." Ryan closed his eyes. "We talked about buying our own home." "I know. We talked about everything. I know. No, you didn't. Ryan looked up. Lauren continued. You knew what we discussed. You just didn't believe I had the right to make decisions about my own life. That sentence hit harder than anything I could have said. Because she was right. This wasn't just secrecy. It was theft of choice. He had made financial decisions for all of us. I thought we finally knew everything. We didn't. Lauren asked Ryan whether Rebecca knew he was married. Yes. Did she know I didn't know about the house? Ryan hesitated. Rebecca had claimed she didn't. Now Ryan's silence suggested something different. Ryan, I said. He sighed. She knew I hadn't told Lauren everything. Lauren stood. Rebecca had minimized her knowledge. Maybe she truly didn't understand the entire deception. But she knew enough to realize the arrangement was hidden. That changed how I saw her too. Later that evening, Rebecca called me. She apologized. Then she told me something Ryan had never mentioned. She had repeatedly encouraged him to tell us. Ryan kept saying he needed more time. Rebecca admitted she should have refused the house. But by then she had already moved. Already given up her rental. Already built a sense of security around what Ryan had offered. Everyone had found a reason to postpone the truth. And every delay made the truth more expensive. I asked Ryan to bring me every document related to the property. Mortgage papers. Insurance records. Repair invoices. Bank transfers. Everything. 2 days later, we reviewed them together. That was when I found something that hurt almost as much as the original lie. Ryan had listed me in several preliminary financial notes as a family partner. Not legally an owner. But someone supporting the purchase. He had created an entire narrative around my involvement. He had told people I wanted to help Rebecca. That I had encouraged him. That I saw the house as a way to settle unfinished family business. I stared at those words. My reputation had been used to give moral legitimacy to a decision I knew nothing about. I could survive the financial risk. My savings were stable. My credit could recover if necessary. But seeing my name attached to statements I never made left me feeling strangely violated. I looked at Ryan. You didn't just borrow my credit. He stared at the table. You borrowed my character. That evening I sat alone in my living room. There was a photograph of Elaine on the shelf. She had always understood Ryan better than I did. When he was a teenager, she used to tell me he had a dangerous habit. He hated seeing people hurt. That sounds like a good trait. And usually it is. But Elaine noticed something deeper. Ryan wanted to fix every injustice immediately. He struggled to accept that some problems didn't belong to him. He would take responsibility for other people's emotions. Sometimes their mistakes. Sometimes their pain. Elaine once told him, helping people doesn't give you permission to control the outcome. I hadn't thought about that sentence in years. Now I understood exactly what she meant. Ryan had seen Rebecca's pain. He felt responsible. Then he became so convinced of his moral mission that he stopped respecting everyone else involved. Empathy without boundaries had turned into manipulation. That was difficult for me to accept. Because I had raised him to care. I had simply failed to teach him that caring did not make him entitled to make decisions for other adults. We had a serious practical problem. My name was attached to the mortgage. Rebecca lived in the property. Ryan couldn't afford to continue the arrangement without draining his marriage. Something had to change. I spoke with a financial attorney and a mortgage specialist. We reviewed several options. Eventually, Ryan agreed to sell the property. Rebecca initially resisted. I understood why. For the first time in years, she had stability. But that stability had been built on deception. I met with her privately. She apologized again. This time I believed her. She said, "I think I wanted to believe your family finally understood what happened to me." I nodded. "I understand that now." She looked surprised. "But understanding isn't the same as owing you a house." Her eyes filled with tears. "I know." I helped her find information about affordable housing programs and reputable financial counseling. Not because I believed I owed her. Because I could help honestly. There was a difference. The house sold 4 months later. After fees and market changes, there was a small loss. Ryan covered most of it. I contributed nothing beyond what was legally necessary to remove myself from the situation. For the first time in my life, helping my son meant refusing to rescue him. Ryan and Lauren separated. Not permanently at first. Lauren moved into her sister's home while they attended counseling. Ryan wanted immediate forgiveness. Lauren refused. She told him something I respected deeply. "I'm not deciding whether you're sorry. I'm deciding whether I feel safe building a future with you." That was the real consequence. Ryan had spent months believing financial recovery would solve everything. But marriages aren't accounting sheets. You can replace money. You can't automatically replace confidence in someone's judgment. Lauren eventually agreed to continue working on their marriage. But slowly. Very slowly. Separate finances. Full transparency. No major decisions without both signatures. Some people might see those conditions as harsh. I didn't. Trust doesn't return because someone apologizes. Trust returns when a person becomes predictable again. Ryan and I stopped speaking for almost 2 months. Not because I hated him. Because every conversation became an argument about intention. He kept telling me he had meant well. I kept telling him that intentions didn't erase consent. Finally, one evening, he came to my house. No folder. No explanation. No request. He sat across from me at the kitchen table. The same place where everything had begun. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan said, "I think I finally understand why you're angry." I looked at him. He continued. "You would have helped Rebecca." I nodded. "Possibly. But you wanted the choice." "Yes. And Lauren might have helped too." "Maybe. But I decided that because I believed something was right, everyone else had to participate." I didn't respond. Ryan looked down. "I turned your kindness into permission you never gave me." That was the first apology that mattered. Not because it was emotional. Because it was accurate. There was still one question I needed answered. "Why didn't you tell me after you found the documents proving David had lied?" Ryan stared out the window. Then he gave me the hardest answer of all. "Because I had already told Rebecca you knew." I understood immediately. He was embarrassed. Ryan had built a relationship with Rebecca around the idea that he was helping correct something I had refused to correct. When he learned I was innocent, admitting the truth would have meant admitting he had judged me unfairly. Instead of facing that embarrassment, he continued the lie. That was the real origin of everything. Not compassion. Pride. Ryan didn't want to admit he had been wrong about his father. So he kept making decisions that required the original lie to remain believable. One lie became money. Money became a mortgage. The mortgage became a secret life. And eventually, the truth became too large to hide. Before moving from the house, Rebecca asked to see me. We met at a coffee shop halfway between our homes. She brought a small cardboard box. Inside were several old photographs of David. Pictures from when he was young. Pictures I had never seen. She pushed the box toward me. "These belong with you." I looked through them quietly. Then Rebecca said something unexpected. David spent years telling both of us different versions of the same story. I looked at her. He told you I blamed you. He told me you were hiding money for him. She shook her head. He kept us angry at each other because it protected him from being questioned. That realization softened something inside me. For 25 years, Rebecca and I had each carried a version of the past built partially on someone else's dishonesty. Ryan had inherited that confusion. Then created another version himself. Family betrayal doesn't always begin with cruelty. Sometimes it begins when people protect themselves by changing the story. Eventually, nobody remembers where the first lie started. A year after the house was sold, Ryan called me. He and Lauren had decided to begin looking for a home again. A real one. Together. Ryan didn't ask me to co-sign. He actually told me he wouldn't accept it if I offered. They were going to buy whatever they could qualify for on their own. Several months later, they found a small townhouse. Nothing fancy. 2 bedrooms. Older kitchen. Tiny backyard. Ryan invited me to the inspection. When we stood in the empty living room, he smiled. This one she's actually seen. I laughed for the first time about any part of the situation. Lauren was standing nearby. She laughed too. But there was still history between them. Healing doesn't erase history. It simply changes what you build around it. People sometimes ask whether I regret co-signing. Financially? Absolutely. I should have verified every detail. I should have spoken directly with Lauren before signing anything. Trust doesn't replace due diligence. Especially when your financial future is involved. But the bigger lesson had nothing to do with mortgages. I learned that betrayal can wear the face of good intentions. Ryan wasn't trying to destroy his marriage. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He thought he was correcting an injustice. But the moment he decided his purpose mattered more than our consent, he crossed a line. That is something I will never forget. You cannot create justice for one person by deceiving another. You cannot repair an old wound by creating a new one. And you cannot call something generous when someone else is unknowingly paying the price. Today, Ryan and I have a relationship again. Different from before. More honest. Less automatic. There are things I verify now that I once would have accepted with a handshake. That makes me sad sometimes. But perhaps trust after betrayal isn't about returning to who you were. Maybe it's about learning how to love someone without ignoring what they are capable of. I eventually forgave my son. But forgiveness did not mean pretending nothing happened. Because the money was never the hardest part. I could forgive losing money. I could forgive the stress. I could even forgive having my credit tied to a house that was never meant for the future I had been promised. What I struggled to understand was why my son needed my name to betray his own family. And eventually, I realized the answer. He wanted to believe he was doing the right thing so badly that he stopped asking whether he was doing it the right way. That mistake almost cost him his marriage. It nearly destroyed our relationship. And it taught all of us something we should have understood much earlier. A good intention built on deception is still a betrayal. And sometimes the most painful family secrets aren't the ones hidden from strangers. They're the ones created by people who are absolutely certain they know what's best for everyone else.